What is the ADA? Reasonable accommodation. Undue hardship? Okay, that seems kind of vague, but whatever. Basically, it's illegal to discriminate against someone based on their disabilities now. Cool. Let's see how far we've come. So in 1988, before the ADA was passed, 50% of people with disabilities were employed, compared to like 87-ish% of those without disabilities. And now, 30 years of growth and progress later, it's, oh wow, that, what's the actual, it's like 22%? Is that? Hey, where's the chart that says disabled people are employed at the same rates as able people and all capitalism needed was to be nicer? No, that's just one big middle finger. Oh. The ADA. 30 years later. Now, before we jump into why the employment rate has continued to plummet, I'd like to clarify a few things. I'm not here to be ungrateful for all that the disability rights movement has accomplished for me and others like me. Thanks to the 504 sit-in, government buildings are accessible, public transit is accessible, disabled children have access to public education, there are curb cuts and elevators and all kinds of good stuff now that helps not only people with mobility devices, but also those who have strollers or rolling luggage. Remember that making spaces accessible often also helps abled people as well. The 504 sit-in was undoubtedly a success in so many ways. The ADA even had its share of successes. Most businesses now have ramps and accessible seating and bathrooms. It's tricky to gauge the social progress as far as an overall reduction of ableist bias, but maybe there's something there. The employment rate, however. Yeah, that's not going so well. So this chart measures the percent of each population that is employed, which is so useful. But you're likely more familiar with the unemployment rate, which is actually kind of shit. The unemployment rate typically only measures those who have been actively looking for a job for the past month, which means those who are not looking are not counted. To get a more accurate picture of our economy, we obviously also have to factor in those who have given up looking and the underemployed, those who work part-time but need to work full-time. Anyway, keep that in mind when people say unemployment is low. It may just mean people have stopped looking or are stuck working part-time jobs that don't pay a living wage. So why does disabled employment keep dropping, even though we have rights now? First, let's talk about how the ADA was passed. So, the first point I need to make is that not everyone can work.
That's a lie. Everyone can do some kind of work.
No, I mean it like, wait, Jeremy Strawman? Where did you even come from? I was doing this one on my own.
I live forever within you.
Cool, great. Anyway, when I say not everyone can work, I mean due to our economic system, we can't have full employment. It's not even something the Federal Reserve pretends is realistic. Remember that one lecture for Intro to Economics you listened to for 5 minutes and then got bored because even though you like math, economics is the most boring kind of math there is? Oh my god, I don't care what your fake system has to say about the way fake consumers act. What did you learn? Supply and demand. Okay, so if the demand for workers is higher than the supply of workers, then workers can demand higher wages. This drives up inflation.
Wait, are you saying the government wants people to be unemployed? Is that where you're going? That doesn't make any sense.
The Federal Reserve is a complex system of checks and balances. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. The lowest acceptable rate of unemployment, before inflation rates are apparently affected, is called the normal or natural rate of unemployment. Wow. Way to really bring the naturalistic fallacy into the heart of your made-up labor system. Well done, capitalist propagandists. Looks like some dudes try to rebrand it as non-inflationary rate of unemployment, or NIRU, I assume to avoid the eugenicsy undertones, but the naturalistic fallacy is hilarious. I'm sticking with natural rate of unemployment. So this number is disputed, but typically ranges from 3 to 6% of the population, which is something like 10 to 20 million people in the United States. And, of course, there's really nothing natural about it. So, when unemployment is up, business is good, wages are low, inflation is low. When unemployment is down, business is bad, wages are higher, inflation is higher. So how can we inflate the unemployment rate to help businesses and suppress wages? That's right, we increase the workforce. Many of us, less exploitables, are part of what might be referred to with Marxist terminology as the reserve army of labor. Actually, Engels came up with the term reserve army of labor, but Marx figured out it's a necessary component for capitalism's function. Here's a video by Mexi explaining the concept more fully in the context of the global reserve army of labor. You know, when wages get too high here, so employers just pick up some kids in another country and force them to make our shoes. It's the same general idea. To keep the exploitation close to home, America passes symbolic legislation like the ADA and the ADA and cuts benefits to sort of force people who can't work, or at least won't be hired, into the workforce. This sends the message that there is more competition, and also keeps people desperate and impoverished and with no other option but to destroy their health trying to work, because they keep getting denied benefits, or can't live off the benefits afforded to them. Ooh boy, isn't it fun to play with people's lives for the sake of the economy?
Wait, I just looked it up. The Bushes passed the ADA and ADAAA? Republicans passed a social justice bill? Well, now I am suspicious.
Jeremy, the Democrats also picked business over justice. Bill Clinton passed a lot of anti-welfare legislation. They're just sneakier about it. It's really not so strange at all that Republicans passed the ADA and subsequent amendments. They're always trying to keep the exploitation here, while Democrats try and push it away. That's really the main political difference between them. So the ADA increased the amount of people looking for work, increasing the unemployment rate, increasing perceived competition, and further suppressed wages. For more context on this, read Martha Russell's essay, The New Reserve Army of Labor, in the essay collection Capitalism and Disability, which I will continue to talk about in all of my videos. Just go read it already.
Anti-welfare legislation? Why would Democrats do that?
Following the passage of the ADA, various states and federal benefits agencies may have felt a little freer to cut and deny benefits, justifying their actions because, well, disabled people had employment rights now. Notice how after 1990, raises to benefits have been relatively low, ignoring this 1986 Reaganomics bullshit number. This leaves disabled people, even those who simply can't physically and/or emotionally get through a standard work week, with no real choice but to look for work, even though we know we probably won't be hired or stay hired just because the government now says we're capable of working just like anyone else.
But aren't you? I mean, you could make a Patreon and live off that money, right? You've got over 2,000 subscribers now.
I mean, disabled people can work, and have always been doing some amount of labor. Not all of us, of course, but almost all of us can do some amount of some form of labor. But in our current system, we're disincentivized to work at all unless we can do the standard 40 hours per week. For instance, I don't have a Patreon because if I make $250 per month, an amount no one can actually live off of, then I'll no longer receive benefits. I don't really want to roll the dice right now. Maybe if I have more than 10,000 subscribers or something. I guess I don't really know much about this kind of thing. I'm sure people in the comments will be more than happy to tell me my optimal course of action. Oh, and remember that if I have more than $2,000 in assets, then I will also no longer receive benefits. Right now, it's better for me to do no paid work at all than it is to actually do what I really can to contribute.
That seems wrong. You're probably just doing it wrong. Why don't you just get a nice steady job you can do remotely? You can always sue if they won't let you do it remotely. The ADA made it so you can sue.
The ADA did promise that if we were hired and needed accommodations or were discriminated against, then we could sue in a court of law. But it didn't promise that these lawsuits would be successful. By the year 2000, employers prevailed in 95% of ADA cases. Law professor Ruth Kolker said this outcome is worse than results found in comparable areas of the law. Only prisoners' rights cases fare as poorly. And I probably don't need to tell you how shitty we are with prisoners' rights.
What? 95%? That can't be right. It must have gotten better since 2000. That was 20 years ago.
It's hard to say. This article from 5 years ago seems to indicate it has not. When I was searching for statistics on how many ADA lawsuits are actually successful, I got mostly articles such as this one from Forbes titled "The ADA Lawsuit Contagion Sweeping U.S. States," which is about how disabled people are falsely bankrupting small businesses for having their signs slightly askew. Jesus Christ, Google, you bourgeois overlord.
But don't people try to falsely sue under the ADA? Are you saying the entire court system is against disabled people?
You know the vast majority of cases are legitimate. I'm not entertaining this idea that people fake disabilities for special treatment. And yes, our justice system is deeply ableist. This is one of two main hypotheses for why the ADA sucks so hard. It's termed the judicial resistance thesis. It basically boils down to a catch-22 situation. When a disabled person takes their employer to court over reasonable accommodations, they can be deemed too disabled to work at all, for instance, if they collect any sort of government assistance, or they can be deemed not disabled enough for the ADA to apply to them if, for instance, they have compensatory, wow. I hate when you write a word and you know that word, you know it in writing, and then you try and say it. Anyway, devices which compensate for the disability, like a wheelchair. Yes, a wheelchair user was considered not disabled enough for the ADA to apply. Lose-lose either way. The ADAAA got rid of this little device loophole, which now only applies to glasses and contact lenses, and on the overall attempted to expand the definition of disability, but judges still find ways to wiggle around it. Judges tend to see ADA cases as disabled plaintiffs asking for special treatment or extra help, rather than as a person requesting a normal human need, like the ability to enter a building or to sit down sometimes.
What kind of a jury would go along with something so blatantly, wrong?
Ableist, Jeremy. There's a word for it. Most ADA cases never actually see a jury and are instead settled as a summary judgment, which means the case is handled by the judge alone. It's meant to save everyone time and money. Few can afford to take their case to, say, the Supreme Court, and would be ill-advised to do so anyway. Cases fare even worse for disabled plaintiffs once they're taken to a federal level.
That's horrible. But maybe the costs really are just way too high for employers to accommodate.
Ah, yes. This other theory has been termed the unintended harm thesis, which is basically the idea that, hey, maybe employers don't want to hire disabled workers because they cost more now that they legally have to accommodate them. So that's another explanation for why there was a higher percent of employment when disabled workers had to go unaccommodated with no legal recourse and hide their disabilities if possible. Not that there's legal recourse now, and certainly plenty of people are still hiding their disabilities in order to remain employed. A lot of accommodations, like simply letting people sit down, Walmart just let them sit down, really aren't that costly, and many actually save employers time and money and increase productivity, like letting people work from home on their own schedule. Anyway, the unintended harm thesis seems to imply that the ADA accidentally increased employers' ableist biases. In states which had similar laws passed prior to the ADA, but without the reasonable accommodations loophole, disabled employment was significantly higher than the national average.
But you can't take that out. What if someone demanded something really unreasonable, like an entire elevator put into a small local restaurant at the employer's expense?
Disabled people understand finances, Jeremy. No one's trying to bankrupt their own workplace. And if people are trying to take back money from massive corporations, then that is objectively the correct thing to do.
Stealing is never the right thing to do, Leslie. Why are you like this?
I haven't always been like this, Jeremy. But one day, I believe you too will see that looting is fine and good. Remember, everyone, your employer can't pay you the full value of your work, and therefore steals from you every day.
Not gonna happen. So, the court system was against people with special needs, and then employers stopped hiring them. Is that why individuals with special needs are being employed at a lower rate now compared to 30 years ago?
Just say disabled people. It's not a bad word, you can say it. And no, not entirely. that doesn't seem like a complete explanation to me. If anything, those factors would explain no change in employment, but I don't believe they really explain the drop. The statistic is apparently controlled for age, so the baby boomers aging into disabilities who can't retire is not a factor. Inmates, many of whom are disabled, see my video criminalizing disability, shameless plug, are also not factored into the statistic, despite often being employed. And we all know how much our incarceration rates have grown since 1990. This might be a significant factor. There's also been a strong movement to shut down sheltered workshops, which has been pretty successful. I think there are less than 200,000 people now working in these places in America. I'm not sure if these 200,000 people in sheltered workshops and disabled people otherwise doing legal sub-minimum wage labor are factored into this employment statistic, but if they are, then closing these workshops and ending sub-minimum pay may be something else contributing to the lower employment rate. Which is good. Abolish sheltered workshops. People should not be working for sub-minimum wage. Regardless of the possible complicating factors, this falling rate of employment of disabled workers ought to be viewed as an inevitable failure of late-stage capitalism. There simply aren't enough jobs for everyone. There are never supposed to be enough jobs for everyone. And who do you think is always the first to go? In an excellent essay about environmental injury in the book Skin, Tooth, and Bone, the authors, who are all disabled, refer to themselves as canaries in the coal mine that our planet is becoming after 500 years of colonist destruction and capitalist expansion. I'd posit that this job loss situation is yet another instance in which disabled people are canaries being sacrificed to the coal mine. Listen, we all need to get the fuck out of this coal mine.
Do you actually know anyone who lost their job because of their disability?
Every disabled person has lost a job or knows someone who's lost a job due to their disabilities. This goes double or triple for people with multiply marginalized identities. People who are disabled and queer and/or black, brown, fat. You get the idea. Even controlling for other factors like class, black people are still unemployed at twice the rate of white people. A major problem with the ADA legislation and many disability movements and disability representation in general is they aren't intersectional. Often, I think this is because if you make a movement too inclusive, then you end up inching closer and closer to equality, and oops, oh shit, now you're a communist. Comrades, 1/3 of LGBT people identify as having a disability. Like me. Hi. Due to poor environmental conditions, namely pollution, lack of healthcare, and lack of nutritional food options, disability runs rampant in low-income communities which are predominantly Black, Latinx, and Indigenous. If you haven't already, check out disability justice projects like Sin's Invalid. I'll include links in the description to social media and places to support them.
Yeah, of course black people have it worse. Republicans are so racist. You didn't answer my question, though.
It's not just never mind. I don't have time for this. Okay. So, one of my best friends worked at a daycare when she was in college, and since she was the youngest person there, they made her take the kids out onto the playground for their 30-minute recess every day. Maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal, except we live in Florida and my friend has multiple sclerosis. So that's 100 degrees of Florida heat for 30 minutes every day. And if you know anything about MS, you can see why that's a huge problem. She finally had to disclose her condition to her supervisor, and coincidentally, she was switched to a floater position the next day by her supervisor's boss. Her boss said it was because she was slow at changing diapers, which weirdly hadn't been a problem until after she disclosed her condition. The daycare proceeded to give her fewer and fewer hours with each passing week until she had to find a new job entirely. At the time this happened, I didn't yet identify as disabled or leftist, though I had all of the same conditions I do now and really lower day-to-day functionality. I actually suggested that she try and sue her employer. Early 20s Leslie, why would you do that unironically? Thankfully, she knew she didn't have a case, and she didn't bother with it. But yes, Jeremy Strawman, I was once like you. Dear viewers, don't be early 20s Leslie. Be you, a person who is probably way more informed than she was. If you or a loved one are being discriminated against, Burn down your nearest Walmart. Haha, no, I'm totally kidding. Definitely don't do that. I am a capitalist. Money is my favorite. Yay, exploitation. On that note, remember, disabled and abled comrades, there is no shame in being less exploitable. Please comment your own experiences with ableism in the workplace or hiring process. I love that sweet rage fuel. Send it to me. Let me inject it. Okay. This has gone on too long. Okay. The end. This is the end. Bye.